But some thoughts, first of all, on what's happened with Nicola Sturgeon. Apart from the very fact this is just unprecedented to have, you know, such a prominent British politician in custody for so many hours. Yes, released without charge, but this is a significant moment.
It's very significant. Nicola Sturgeon is the United Kingdom's answer to Donald Trump. Right? Let's look at the points of comparison. She refuses to accept election results other than her own, which, by the way, has arguably prompted this whole mess in the first place. The fact that the SNP never accepted the original referendum result. They said, we're going to have a second referendum, which, of course, was this fighting fund that is now the subject of an investigation. What she's alleged of doing is far worse than any other politician in this country. I mean, you compare her to Boris, for example. I mean, the worst that Boris has had is a police fine for having a bit of birthday cake.
Well, she says, I know beyond doubt that I am, in fact, innocent of any wrongdoing. She is a lawyer. She knows the law inside out.
She does.
And she will protest her innocence. The question, I suppose, is why are the SNP clinging on to her? Why haven't they suspended her?
It's very curious, isn't it? There is for those people who support Nicola Sturgeon, it's a sort of almost cult-like support. It's you know, she can do no wrong in any circumstances. The current leader of the SNP knows how much political support she still retains within the party and within Scotland as well. And it would be interesting to see.
He was her anointed one, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
Yeah. And
now he's in the very difficult position of having to possibly suspend his political mentor. It's a big test of his leadership.
Alex, here's the thing. What do I know? I know absolutely nothing, and I suppose I may speak for a lot of other people on this, because whether you like Nicola Sturgeon, whether you don't, whether you agree with her politics or not, I would find it really hard to believe that she could be motivated by something as base as money, or you know, I know there's an ongoing case, I know, but I just find it. Politically, she's entrenched in her ideology, and you sort of think, surely it doesn't come down to money. And I think a lot of people will be in that position.
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, we are very lucky in this country in that, generally speaking, we don't have politicians who are motivated by money, and we don't have politicians who are corrupt in that fashion.
Yeah.
And that is obviously a very good thing. But what we do see with politicians like Nicola Sturgeon is that when they dig in, they will not move. And it doesn't matter if they were in the wrong or not. It doesn't matter if they oversaw something that was in the wrong. Once they decide to dig in, that's it, and that's where we get these problems.
Which brings us to Boris.
Indeed it does.
Yes. He's accused of organising this mutiny against the Conservative Party. This is not going to end well, is it?
Possibly not. I mean, look, what happened on Friday? I think there was a lot of blood rushing to the head. I think there was a lot of nonsense going on. Hopefully, it will calm down a little bit now. I mean, arguably, he should have left Parliament when he resigned as Prime Minister, because then that would have been a nice, clean break, and then the party and the country could have moved on. He didn't. He chose to stay, and that's partly why we're in this mess, of course, because he was then subject to this standards committee, which he is obviously protesting against.
So just to be clear, when you said there's a lot of nonsense going on, you don't approve of some of the things he was saying, or who are you referring to there?
No, what I mean is that, well, actually, it was in the build-up to that. There was a lot of nonsense about the WhatsApps in the Cabinet Office, and, you know, who was nominated for a peerage and who wasn't nominated, what was promised, what was not promised. All this sort of stuff going on that really, in many cases, is completely unnecessary and should have just been dealt with calmly.
And what do you think happens now? I mean, we see senior Tories being quoted in the front of a national newspaper telling Boris Johnson to shut up and go away. We also hear suggestions that there could be more resignations. I mean, where does this leave the Conservative Party 1 year away from a general election? Can they afford to have such infighting and more by-elections?
No, obviously, and the Rishi Sunak would much prefer not to have this kind of distraction. Look, the basic issue with Boris is that there will always be a section of the Conservative Party, the establishment and the electorate that will never forgive him for Brexit. That's the truth. And it will be very difficult to move on from that whilst there is a chunk of the party and the establishment that just can't get over the referendum result.
And then there's a chunk of all the rest of us who think, I can understand, don't get me wrong, if Margaret Thatcher had recommended her hairdresser for an honour, I could see how that would apply and whatever. I didn't even know Boris Johnson went to the hairdressers, so what is it about that dishevelled look? That is actually thought through, that dishevelled look that he has,
I think the extent of the hairdressing was cutting it. Styling was no. I mean, I think it was just, occasionally you might be able to kind of push him in the room and at least trim it. But beyond that, no control.
So we expect this report to be published today, at least the meeting of the committee's happening 11 a.m. And at that point, we will know whether or not officially, in the views of this democratically elected committee of MPs, that he knowingly or recklessly misled Parliament.
Yes, and obviously, clearly the report's going to be awful for him because that's why he took the action that he did. It's important to point out that this is a committee of politicians judging another politician based on politics, not based on any kind of judicial process. It's labelled as this kind of very sincere, honest kind of body, but let's look at it for what it is. It's politicians judging another politician, and that's the lens through which I think we should see it.
OK.
What way do you see, Alex, your time with Boris Johnson, when you look back through the prism of history on this? Is there anything you'd have done differently? Is there anything you're particularly proud of? Is there anything that you think, I shouldn't have done that? And did it all end in tears for you?
It's something that I've had an opportunity to reflect on. And I think my view is this. At his best, Boris is someone who can galvanise big action. Whether it's through elections and campaigning, or whether it's through big decisions like the decision on the vaccines and Ukraine. However, the flaws in his character, the lack of attention to detail, everything that we know, held him back. And they created a sense of chaos in his administration that arguably wasn't necessary. When he had a strong team around him, which he did when he was London Mayor, I was also fortunate to be part of, actually some great things could happen. It's when that wasn't in place that we started to see the problems. He is in this position because of his own flaws. And look, he's a classicist. He knows the most compelling protagonists are the ones that ultimately are brought down by their own flaws. And there's a certain irony in that.